Okay, now kids, I know you're looking forward to kids time this morning because we're talking about bugs. So I hope you didn't bring any with you from outside into the house, but that's our subject. And then before that, we have the kids song. And I mentioned last week that you might want to find something because the kids song lends itself. I've got all these right here. Now, if you're living in the east end of Barrie, we might be able to hear you if you play loud enough. So we'll be listening, okay? While we're singing the kids song. Jen? Okay. Good morning, kids. I'm going to just kind of sit here. And last week we talked about birds, and this week we're going to talk about bugs. Now, this is the first slide because something happened since last Sunday. I had a slide of the wrens in this particular birdhouse last week. You remember that? But the wren was going inside, I think, and we couldn't see that well. And this is the wrens just earlier in the season, when they just showed up and they were building a nest in the birdhouse. And this is where the wren would perch and it would sing. It would hold forth in a noisy sort of way. Now, I have a question for you kids. When we get into October, November, there aren't going to be any wrens here. And why is that? Why are there going to be no wrens in November for sure? Because the wrens eat bugs and little moths and things like that. When they were feeding their young, mom and dad going constantly back and forth to the garden, getting these little moths and so on and feeding their young. But by November, there won't be any more bugs. I mean, there won't be any more little things for these birds to eat. So they have to go where there's food. And this is such a great time of the year to watch what's happening around us in the world because it's fall. And all kinds of birds and so on are migrating south, and they're coming through Barrie. Did you know that in Ontario we have about 500 species of birds, and in Simcoe County we have more than 300? So this is just the greatest place. And we have the lake. I didn't mention that because in the lake there are lots of ducks and so on that come to Simcoe, Lake Simcoe, on their way. And you know how you've seen a loon, probably two, on the lakes around here and up north? You might see 1,000 loons on Lake Simcoe because this is one of their staging areas. So this is such a great place to watch birds, and there are a lot of them going to come through until fairly late in the fall, and then the winter birds are going to come because it's warm here in the winter. Yeah, somebody looked questioning about that, but it's warm here in the winter. When the juncos come down from the Arctic or subarctic, it's warm. So that's a very, very exciting when they come. But little guys like little men and women, little girls and boys like the wrens are going to be gone by then. So that leads us nicely into, yes, hummingbird. And it's having a drink with the bumblebee. Yeah. So we got the hummingbird and the bumblebee at the hummingbird feeder because the bees like to come and get some quick sugar as well. So that's my transition shade. And then, slide rather, and this next slide is going to be very familiar to you because we have quite a few monarchs just now I see in our garden around about. They're one of our best known butterflies. We love these little creatures. And you know, they go all the way to Mexico to overwinter. You talk about birds being smart. These little creatures, fly all the way down there for warm weather. Isn't that an amazing, amazing thing? And the next butterfly, I took this just this last week in our garden. You can tell that I like zinnias. They might be my favorite flower. On the zinnias, this is a great spangled fritillary butterfly. Now you can imagine the butterflies hanging out together, and the one says, well, I'm a cabbage butterfly. And then this butterfly is asked, well, who are you? Well, I am a great spangled fritillary butterfly. I'll tell you, you can't get much more than that. And I didn't know what fritillary means either, but it has to do with the spots on its wings, because apparently in Latin, a long time ago, a fritillary was like a box in which dice were kept. And so the eyes of the dice are black. And so that's kind of where it gets its name. But what a great name. Great, I just like to say it, great spangled fritillary. There we go. And now we move on. Can you see anything in this slide? Can you see, I'm going to give you a clue, okay? Right in the middle. Can you see something? Oh, I heard somebody say, oh, yeah. And I said, heard somebody else say, what? Okay, we'll go to the next slide, and then you'll see. It's a little bit out of focus because I blew it up. But this was a dragonfly in our garden this past week. Now, Kim, if we backed up the slide, now you see it, don't you? Now you see it. Now this is, I'm not really a specialist on butterflies, on dragonflies, but this is a 12 spot, 12, I should have written that down. So you have to look that up. It's a 12 spotted, I think it's a 12 spotted skimmer because it's got those black on its wings. And we have hundreds of types of dragonflies too. I think this is the first time maybe that I have noticed one in our garden, and it's quite a big one. And dragonflies, what do they do? I mean, they look sharp, dress sharp, some of them very, but they eat bugs, littler bugs. And if you have mosquitoes around, they eat mosquitoes. Now, we have lots and lots of mosquitoes, don't we? And one thing I'd like to remind you of, if we had no bugs, many, many things would have nothing to eat. And so all these birds, there are a lot of birds that eat flies. There are a lot of little creatures like dragonflies that eat mosquitoes and black flies and all kinds of things like that. They're very, very useful. So that is the dragonfly I wanted to show you from our backyard. And then, what? This is a rabbit fly. How did it get in there? This is a rabbit fly. They really don't fly. So kids, if you see one of these in a tree, would you give the church a call and leave a message for me? Because I'd like to come over and see it. How to get in our backyard? I don't know. Cute though, isn't it? Okay, I'm ready to go on to something more serious. These are one of my favorite bugs. And I just moved something in the backyard. Like there were some leaves in a container, and I moved the container, and this was underneath. Now, this is called a woolly bear caterpillar. It's called a woolly bear. And if you disturb it in any way, it curls up and looks just like this. I love these. Aren't they sharp looking? And the next slide will show us, decided to move. And they have black on the ends and orange in the centers. And farmers used to look at these little caterpillars, and depending on how much orange there was in the center, it was going to be an easier or a harder winter. Now, the next slide, I think he's going to move. Maybe. Oh, there we go. Look at him go. Like I couldn't tell whether he was singing when he was, okay, isn't that neat? The woolly bear caterpillar. And you'll see these in the fall. When you're driving around country roads and so on, you can see them crossing the road. It is the most amazing thing. There's a road, and this little caterpillar, this one, well, not this exact one, is making its way across the road in hopes of getting to the other side. I make an attempt not to run over them. Because, I mean, what a big deal. If you think about this little caterpillar and it's crossing a road, it doesn't look very big to us, but imagine what it looks like to the caterpillar, because they can't see the other side. It's like the end of the world. So one of my favorite bugs I should say insect, shouldn't I? Because there might be some bugs listening. And what does this become? This caterpillar weaves itself, should I say a cocoon? Yeah. I don't know if we have that video, Kim. It's on a website. And on the sermon notes this morning, I've listed a number of websites, kids. Have your parents run off a copy. And there's one about the woolly bear. And it shows her, I don't know. They're weaving this protection for the winter. And they'll almost freeze through. But in the spring, they have like special things going on where they'll wake up in the spring and here's what it becomes, folks. Ta-da! Yeah! This is called the Isabella tiger moth. Now, I didn't get this from my backyard because they may be there, but I haven't seen them yet. But they're common. They got to be common. So the Isabella tiger moth. Now, how a woolly bear becomes a tiger, I'm just going to leave that with you because I'm not sure how that happens. And so it's pretty neat, isn't it? It's now got black spots. So then next. Okay. Now I have a couple of things for you and for your parents why I'm showing you these things. There are a couple of reasons. First of all, it's something that you and your parents can look at around us. I think God made all of these things so that when we saw them, we would say, wow, which is what I say, wow, that's really neat. How did it get here? What's it doing here? And then you think about God and all the things that God makes around us and how neat everything is, like every little creature. And these little creatures have their own personalities and individualities. I didn't tell you about some of you have aquariums. And our son Jason had an aquarium for 10 years, and he had lots of fish over the years. But one time he had a pink shark. It was like 3 inches. It was about, we're in centimeters now, so it was about like that. It wasn't very big, and it would sleep upside down in the corner of the aquarium, halfway up the aquarium. And I still think about that. Isn't that neat? But back to bees. So you and your parents can look at these things around us and be amazed, okay? Now this is a bumblebee, of course, and it's at the hummingbird feeder, isn't it? Now I want you to look at the bee. Is there anything distinctive about the bee? Well, this is, if you notice, it's got a black dot on its abdomen. Yeah, it's got a black dot on its abdomen, and this is a common eastern bumblebee. And there are many of them around, and so you're going to see them in the fall. And you may even have a hive around your house or property somewhere. They don't have a big hive. It's not hundreds of bees at all. And we had a hive in some rotted railway tie at the end of our driveway. And I didn't know the hive was there until I was cutting the grass. Of course, I was wearing shorts in the summertime, and I got stung twice on the ankle. So what did I do? What would you do? It was at the end of the garage, this hive. It wasn't bothering anything. What did I do? I just left the grass around it. And they were there through the summer, and then that was it, you know. And just a couple of weeks ago, well, maybe a month ago, Elaine was in our kids' clubhouse where we store stuff over the winter, and the bees had started a hive in some burlap that we used to cover our bushes in the winter. And they were working away, and it really wasn't a good place for them. And so what do we do? I know the first thing we think of sometimes is, I'm going to get something that'll kill those bees. And that's not a good way to think, because these little bees are so important to us because they pollinate our apples, our fruit, all kinds of things that we eat need these bees. And so parents, we need to be careful around our homes and so on with these bumblebees. Now, at the same time, I think we could go on to the next slide. Okay, different type of bee. We need to be careful, kids. If you're out looking around for these creatures, be very careful of bees and hornets and spiders too. You don't want to mess with some spiders can hurt you really, really badly, even here where we live. And some of you may be allergic to bee stings, and so you need to be very, very careful. And if you're investigating nature, maybe that's something you should leave alone, okay? Because there are lots and lots of things that you can look for. Now, this is a different kind of bee, and it's going to lead me into something, because there is an organization now called Bumblebee Watch, which is trying to identify native species, or indigenous, I guess, species of bees. Not all of them have been identified, even in Ontario, and some that we didn't know are here. And so there's an organization called Bumblebee Watch, and I'm going to give you the address in a moment, but they're trying to find where bees are, what types are where, and such like. And I was out in the garden, and they invite you to take a picture, send it to them, and they'll identify it for you. So I took pictures. This is our backyard too, a different kind of flower, and there's an ant there too. That's not a bee, the one on the right. And so I took some pictures, including this one, and I sent it in. And you know what this is, kids? This is a honeybee. So I felt kind of stupid, because honeybee in our backyard. And if you live in the east end of Barrie, there are hives here. There are hives. And this bee probably came in our garden, probably came from that hive, because they'll roam over a few kilometers in search of what they need. So this is a honeybee, and they too, they're docile, and they won't hurt you, parents. You should never mess with bees, but these are the very docile bees, and they too are very, very important to us. Very important. We want to protect these little creatures that God made. Okay, next. There's the address, kids. It's bumblebeewatch.org, and you can get your parents to go on the internet with you and go to this site, and it will show you a lot of things about bees and different types of bees well, from all over, as a matter of fact. Part of this organization is based at York University, so it's not far away. We're going to switch gears again. Yes. We're moving into the fall, and I said that later in the fall, different kinds of birds will come through because they're migrating. What an exciting time. And we don't have this little bird yet in our backyard, but it's a flycatcher. And you see them in the fall flitting around from bush to bush and so on. As the name suggests, they catch flies. And so bugs and insects are very, very important in the world that we live in and to the creatures that we share it with. So later in the fall, you might see this little bird, a flycatcher, but not just yet. And then later, the juncos will come. Okay, and I mentioned things that you might collect. You can collect some things this fall. And just this morning, I was out in our backyard, and I picked up this little black feather. It's not a very big feather. I happen to know it belongs to a grackle, because we have, and you have maybe in your backyard, some of these birds. But it's when I was a kid, I used to collect feathers. You go different places, you get a feather. And so you can build up, because birds shed feathers sometimes, and you can collect them. It's really, really interesting. And you find a feather, you don't know where it's come from, what kind of bird, and you can ask your mom or your dad, your grandparents or somebody, hey, what's this? And then that will send them trying to find what it is. Okay.